everyone, I'm Dan Albers, and welcome to This Week in Anderson on the Big Guy Sports Podcast on USBN Sports. And as always, I'm joined with my co-host, Steve Ellis. And Steve, I'm really excited about having Scott Wilhoit here.
Yes.
Known not only in the Anderson, Turpin, McNick area, but throughout the city of Cincinnati. And I know the thing I can't wait to dive into, and we're going to talk about here later on, is his love for concession stand pretzels. I can't wait to get into that one.
That's why we had him on. We've known him for a long, long time, and he's obviously a legend at McNick High School and now at UC. His license plate, I just pulled up behind him, it says UC Willie on it.
Yes, sir.
So, a legend at both, and I'm sure we could probably do like a series, like 3 or 4 shows with him with the stories that this guy could tell.
Yeah, I mean, just go from everything from McNick to UC, and then everything outside of that, and everybody that he's associated with. So, as we said, joining us is our guest here, Scott Wilhoit. And Scott, really, thanks for joining us here tonight.
Nope, thanks for having me.
So
I got that license plate when I was 16 years old, and just
did you really?
No kidding.
Just kept it my whole life. And just kept renewing it.
It's in the blood. It's in the blood.
That is crazy.
I love it.
That is awesome. So we always start our podcast off by just kind of talking about growing up in the Anderson area. Talk a little bit about where you grew up in Anderson and what that was like growing up as a kid.
So I grew up on Stormy Way, right there off Bernie. My parents still live there. I actually live in Sherwood now.
Okay.
Which you're talking about my McNick connection. I bought the house from Steve and Aaron Cupido.
No way.
I mean, it was actually a joke because they were giving me a hard time about moving out, and he made me an offer on the house, and I took it on the spot, and I think he was kind of not happy because he lowballed me, and it was like, I've been in the house for 17 years now.
You took me serious?
Really?
Oh, he's like, buy this house, and I was like, okay, how much? And he gave me a price, and I said, do it. And we went up and got a contract and signed it that night.
No kidding.
And I've been in the same house the whole time. I'm still good friends with the Cupidos. Stay in touch with them all the time.
So that's crazy.
How long have you lived there?
I think it's 17 years now.
Okay.
And Sherwood's weird. You guys know that area. I was like the young single guy, and everybody had kids, and they were getting older.
Yes.
It's a great school. Everybody in the morning walks to school over there.
Right.
Now they've all sold their houses, and I'm the older guy. And every these young couples are there because it's a great. You don't see any of these kids all day long, and then about 8:30 in the morning, it's like Grand Central Station. Just walking to school.
Yeah.
So what was that like growing up in where you lived at off of Bernie? What was that like growing up with all the?
I mean, I went to Guardian Angels, went to McNick. I always had big shoes to fill because my brother was such a great athlete.
Yep.
I'm not the most athletic guy in the world, but I was a football guy.
Okay.
Right.
We went through McNick back in the days. You guys remember back in like the 70s, 80s, McNick was always better than Anderson, and it kind of rotated.
Right.
And then when I was there, McNick was not very good.
Okay.
We were on John Rodenberg's first team at McNick.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So he came over. If you remember Guardian Angels, we used to play St. James White Oak.
Okay.
We were undefeated, and they kicked our butt. And they brought his coach in this. He's going to teach us his new defense. It was John Rodenberg. And he taught us his 6-2. We ended up losing like 6-0. And then he got hired at McNick the next year, or I should say a couple years after that. But he came from LaSalle. He's the first person that kind of put McNick back on the map.
Yeah.
We weren't the greatest, but after his first year, they already signed him to a lifelong contract. But I was always a football guy. My brother was a basketball guy. So like I felt like I had to do something with the basketball team.
Okay.
That's how I became a manager.
Okay.
In my freshman year, I went to Jerry Durger, and just said, I want to be involved.
What's the age difference between you and your brother?
About 5 years.
Okay.
So he had just graduated. He was out and all that. Craig was. The timing was they added the 3-point line, I think, his junior, senior year.
Okay.
So he had all kinds of scoring records, all that kind of stuff, but he never had a 3-point line for a long time. I'm biased, obviously, but he was one of the best shooters in Cincinnati at the time.
No question.
Him and Jeff Click used to go at it all the time. Amelia. He just, that was his thing.
Well, and back at that time, wasn't Amelia and McNick in the league together, weren't they?
Not McNick. No,
was it Queen City for a while?
Yeah,
really? McNick was in the. Is that right?
Harrison was in it. It was a very weird.
Really?
It was a really weird thing, and I remember that.
But those were like rivalry games. I mean, there were fist fights and pushes.
No question about it.
People jumping out of the stands, like you'd get arrested
like
for nowadays.
Like some Hoosiers or something.
Yeah. It was totally like that. But then afterwards, it was all good natured.
Yeah.
But that's how I kind of got into it. And I went to Durger. I was an all GCL lineman. I was like, I'll just fill water bottles up. I don't care. I just want to be around the program.
Okay.
And those guys, Chris Wilson and Dave Gardner and Zermley. I mean, I went to the Final Four twice as a manager.
Oh my gosh.
That's back in the day.
How cool is that?
We used to schedule everybody.
Yeah.
The Jerry Durger, he would look at the best teams in the city, and we were going to schedule those guys. Because we went to the Final Four once. We were sub 500 going in the Final.
I remember this.
Yeah.
I remember that.
We would have had to win a state championship to finish 500. So you go to Columbus, you get no respect. But you played Withrow when George Jackson was there.
Yep.
You played all the big GCL.
Right.
You always played Moeller, Elder, Ex LaSalle.
Yep.
You just did it.
Yep.
If you got beat, but you got ready for the tournament.
Yeah.
Sectional titles, that was preseason. If you didn't win a sectional title, I don't remember never not winning a sectional title.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's just the way it was.
Always there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you're right.
That's absolutely
crazy. That is. All right. So when you were growing up, you say you played football, right?
Yeah.
For GA.
So I played for GA, and the problem was, and I'm not saying, but I was always over the weight limit. So you'd always go. They had really strict weight limits.
Okay.
And so I'd go through all the practices and stuff.
They even had that in Catholic.
You couldn't play. They were just scared to death. You get some of these 7th and 8th grade kids. They're tiny. You get somebody like me who's kind of bigger and all that. You just couldn't do it. So I'd go through all the practices and stuff, and you just never play. Right. I played for Joe Christman, who Joe just passed away last week.
Oh wow.
He's an icon. I think the field's named after him up there.
Okay.
If you remember a guy named Frank Gussick. Frank Gussick was an old Michigan guy.
Okay.
He was an All-American. His son Michael came and played for us, and he'd bring in these Michigan players every year. And you're like, as an 8th grader, you're like, holy cow, who are these guys?
Wow.
And they'd come in and work with us, and that kind. And a lot of those guys actually ended up staying there and coaching for a while.
No kidding.
But see, in that time, like the basketball thing, you didn't have dads go up with you. Dads coached a certain level, and that's what it was. My dad was the 6th grade coach, and Francis Xavier Rudolph was the 7th grade coach, and whoever was it. And you just said, I'm not moving up and down with you.
Yeah.
And it was very honest. Like, so if I was trying out for my dad's team, the other coaches would come in and evaluate, and just it wouldn't be my dad's decision.
Where would that be at?
Ever Guardian Angels.
At GA. Okay.
And I remember like the 6th grade year, like they came in, they're like, you're on the team, but you're the 12th guy. You ain't gonna play. And my dad's like, you ain't gonna play unless you earn it.
Okay.
So it was like, do you want to be on the A team, or you want to go play on the B team?
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, I was kind of fat and slow, and I wasn't a good runner. I hated all the running stuff, but I'd rather just kind of hang out with those guys in practice.
Was that GA and IHM at the time? They were both pretty big at the time, weren't they?
Yeah, that was a big rivalry.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
And even back then, they had baseball, which CYO baseball, I don't even know if it exists anymore. If it does, it's very. But we used to go up there and play. The CYO on Sunday was huge. Us playing against IHM all the time.
Okay.
But if you remember back in the day, I actually know Timmy Albers better than anybody, because we used to grow up competing in knothole.
Okay.
We were Midland, they were town properties, and you played twice a year, and it was packed. The kids at middle school, that was the best park in Cincinnati.
It was.
Saturday at 9, that was the knothole game of the week.
That's
we always played.
That's right.
You always had the Rogers Dentistry people thought they were good, but they were kind of irrelevant. But they were far from it. But
that's funny.
But like it was always like, oh man, that Albers, I can't say we don't like that Albers kids because Timmy was big and he brought the heat.
Ball, right.
Even that 7th, 8th grade level. Those are always solid rivalry games, and we had more rivalries growing up before high school, and then you got high school baseball.
Yeah.
East Side baseball's always been good.
Absolutely.
Anderson solid, Turpin solid, McNick solid, Amelia last year solid.
Well, I was at GA not too long ago, and I remember where the baseball field was, and now it's a parking lot.
Yeah, they're not playing anymore.
Yeah.
The kids, I was at West Claremont for a little bit, and we had talked about doing junior high baseball. Nobody has it anymore.
Right.
Because these kids want to start their summer teams. As soon as the weather breaks, they want to go play for their Midlands and whoever their team is. They don't want to do it. And if you add it, I don't even know if there's 5 teams in the city anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's just the way it is.
Well, the probably the odd man out when it comes to having to zero in on what sport you're gonna play, and some coaches that may or may not force you to pick and choose. And the days of playing 3 sports are slim.
We're telling somebody this is the time of year everybody. I guess I see it. The social media stuff. They want you to be multi-sport athletes.
Yeah.
Okay, but these coaches and ADs, there's some great coaches and great ADs, but they don't share the athletes good.
Right.
If you want a kid to share, you got to treat them with respect, and you got to work with them.
Correct.
I just had a family I was talking about, on an East Side school. Their daughter had made a great run in soccer, and the basketball coach gives her 1 day to come out. It's like you got to give them some time. You got to work with.
Can't breathe.
You got to give them. If I was ever an athletic director, you'd have to take a week mandatory. You have to take it all.
You know what? That's because I remember like when we were playing, I remember coming out of football, we at least got a week or more. It might have been 2 weeks.
I don't know if it's that
we were bad in football too, so I know that I know we got a week, at least a week.
Just try to let your body
The high school season starting earlier and earlier and earlier, and
sure
then your team makes a playoff run. You switch from a fall sport to a winter sport, you just need to adjust a little bit.
Yeah.
You all got bumps and bruises.
Yep.
And it's different conditioning.
Yeah.
But so all these coaches want to put all the stuff about sharing athletes, but they don't share their athletes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Golly. Wow, that's pretty. Well, we could talk about a whole different subject about that for a long time. Go ahead, Danny.
So let's get into your time at McNick. Steve and I know that you were on, as we talked earlier, the basketball manager, and you were the legendary Jerry Durger. let's again talk about like how you kind of briefly explained how you got into it. I mean, was that something that obviously you look back on it now and it was a pretty awesome experience for you?
It was fun. Jerry Durger was a legend back in the day, and he still is. I mean, I think he's been inducted into every Hall of Fame he can get inducted into.
Yep.
The floor's finally been named after him. He was just a legendary coach, but I mean, he was a teacher back in the day. He was a guidance counselor.
Yeah.
I mean, he used to do the summer basketball camps were legendary on the east side. I mean, that gym was packed with probably too many kids in there.
Right.
You know, and you had the shorts with the defense on the butt. And he used to call, every day at lunch, he would have a printed out schedule, a handwritten schedule that you couldn't read of the practice for that day. And on the back of it was all motivational stuff. He firmly believed you could motivate people to do stuff.
Yep.
And he would call you all up there and you'd go up there and get the practice schedule and he'd be like, don't get caught reading this during class, but when we're ready to go at 3, we're ready to go and you better know the schedule.
Right.
So you were just kind of into that, but he was big just outside of basketball there too. I mean, when they renovated the baseball field and they couldn't find funding for the outfield, he funded the thing.
Is that right?
A lot of that money he made on summer camps, he'd go and Dave Becker, the old athletic director, they'd give him the budget for we got $3,000 to fix this place up. He'd throw in a couple more of the thousands, just to fix it up.
That's not shocking.
He took a lot of pride in that stuff. He was really big at lunchtime. You'd get these little notes like, Scott, come see me at 2. Steve, come see me at 2:15.
Yeah.
To come in, you're like, oh, we're in trouble. He just want to sit there and talk to you and just try to, just talk to you about what's going on.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And the one day he came into lunch and there had to be 200 of these little pink slips up there. And you had to go, and we're like, something happened. Was there a party? Was there?
Yeah.
And he had us all, they all said the exact same thing. It said, library, 2:15. And we're like, we are so in trouble. I don't even know what we did. And he pulled us in there and he closed the door. And the one thing about it, he never cussed. He every now and then a slip, but he didn't really cuss a lot.
Okay.
And he closed those doors and he read us the riot act about how we're McNicholas High School. We're not afraid of saying X. We're not afraid of Moeller. We're gonna help each other out. Football players, you're gonna go to the soccer games. Boys, you're gonna go to the girls' sports. Girls, you're gonna go to the boys' sports. And it was just like we had athletes, we had non-athletes, we had band members. Like, what are we doing in here?
Right.
And he was just trying to motivate us.
Right.
Just saying we can compete with anybody. We're not scared with anybody.
Okay.
He kind of really built that sense of pride.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I like doing motivational stuff. You ever follow me on Facebook and stuff? I like putting random stuff like
I love
that.
it.
That's how I kind of got into it.
Well, we've talked to players that have played for him. I mean, how much just respect and like father figure that he was to so many over the years. I mean, and I explained it when we played McNick. I mean, I was not even wearing a McNick uniform, and I was like intimidated by him in a respectful way.
He demanded your respect.
Yeah.
I mean, he just you outworked everybody. That was his big thing, and that's kind of like it was kind of like the next level with Huggins. We were going to outwork everybody.
Yeah.
And weightlifting really wasn't big back then for basketball. Everybody told you if you lifted, you bulked up and you couldn't shoot the ball.
Right.
That's the way it was. The technology's changed since then. But you just came in and you were going to out hustle anybody. You were going to play harder than anybody. You were going to take charges.
Yeah.
You're going to be a defensive team. We ran the flex offense. Everybody hated the flex offense. That's what you were going to run.
Right.
And that's kind of where we got with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He's a good guy off the court too. He's one of those guys that when you sit there and watch a game, he's loud and he screams at people, but he's the first person in the locker room who's going to put your arm around you and explain why he did it.
And that probably, and we'll get into it later about Huggins, probably a lot of similarities between the two. I mean, you're thinking the high energy and the intimidation type of factor, but yet the big heart off the court.
He did that when he used to teach a careers class.
Okay.
Which I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of a joke, but it was a he teaches some stuff about career stuff, but then it was all motivational stuff.
Okay.
Your test was like 100 questions, and it had 4 of the same questions on it. And it was like camp sayings. He's just good, better, best thing, and drop the dollar bill. And I've got that. I'll have to send you a picture. My mom and dad got me a thing engraved up hanging in my house. It's one of the coolest things I have.
Yeah.
That was his thing. He'd get out there and dance and jump up and down. And
I can't even imagine that.
Oh, he was a piece of work.
I can't even. So let's talk. We were talking about some of those great Rocket teams back in the day, back in the 80s. Steve and I were familiar with those teams in the 80s. We were juniors and they were unbelievable when we were juniors.
85.
Kiesling and all those guys, and then you go on, and I mean, it must have been pretty cool back in the day with roaming the halls during that time, because football was good too.
So about 85, they would argue is the best athletic group they ever had.
Yeah.
When I was going through there, though, 93 and 95 were the two Final Four years, and then I think the 2 other years we made it to the regionals, like the Elite Eight.
Okay.
So like in 93, that was like Andy Moring, John Von Holly, those kind of guys. And then 95, like I said, Dave Gardner, Chris Wilson, Joey Putoff, Keith Zermley, Adam Smith, those kind of guys. Yeah. Adam Smith got cut as a freshman. He's like the old Michael Jordan story. He got cut, and Durger said, just keep working hard, and he just worked his butt off and made it.
That?
If you go back and look at him, like his freshman year, it's like, oh, you got cut. Most of these kids don't ever come back.
Well, another one that told me to tell you hi from that team was Kyle Black.
Oh, yeah. He's man, you guys hire anybody as a coach out there.
There it is.
Kyle's a good guy, though. But
yes, he is.
He's one of those guys, came out of nowhere. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But like on Friday nights, you were at the McNick game, the Rat Pack. If you remember the old McNick setup, he used to have that rocket in the end zone.
I hated it.
And that was part of my job. I had to go over and hit that thing, and it never worked.
Oh.
And then it was like 5 seconds later, it would spew out all this stuff that's probably contaminated on you. But that was it. Our student section was packed. And it was intimidating. They put you down there by the visiting team bench.
Oh yeah.
And there's visitors up on the stage, but you couldn't see half the game.
I'll be honest. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't like it. I didn't like that cheer either. That ROCKETS.
Okay, but that gym though, how many?
Couldn't stand it.
What's wrong with you?
Couldn't stand it.
How many gyms in Cincinnati have end zone seating? Because I think that's kind of cool. You really think about it, because the one end was always like alumni, older folks. The one side was students.
Some of the newer gyms, like where you're at, West Claremont's got it, but it's not the same.
No,
I mean that was awesome. Right on it.
That was awesome.
Mm-hmm. No. But like I said, he would schedule the hardest teams. We didn't care if you were 0-20. You got in the tournament. We were going to make a run in the tournament. Right. It was all about the tournament.
Yeah. Wow, that's unbelievable. All right, so let's talk about after McNick, because we could talk about Coach Durger forever. I mean, the legend he is. So you went on to go to UC, and you talked about how you became the manager at McNick. But how did this happen with UC?
So I asked Coach Durger. I just said, hey, I want to stay local. UC was back in that time. That UC was always top 5. They were always They were just coming off a Final Four. They were the hottest thing in town. Okay. Bengals weren't good. Reds weren't good. Xavier was kind of whatever. Durger called Huggins directly, and he said, come down here and meet this guy named John Lawyer. If you remember John Lawyer, coach. John Lawyer went on to have a great career. Yep. And he came in, and he's like, Scott, Durger recommended you. You're in. He goes, there's no scholarship money at first. He goes, but if you stay and work hard, you'll get on scholarship. I ended up going through my whole college career and I actually made profit off of it, to be honest with you.
No kidding.
About 6 months in, I got a scholarship because you go in there and there's like 20 guys that want to do this. They all want to do it. Yep. They don't know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
This is your life. You're there early, you're there late, you're helping. We're breaking down film on VHS tape. Yep. My first day there, they told us, go out to the track. Me and this guy named Jason Buchan, his name's Skippy. You probably heard Skippy. Uh-huh. We go out to the track, and as we're coming out to the run, we sat there for 2 hours, and nobody showed up. And then finally, my new boss came out, and he goes, we forgot to tell you we canceled it. I was like, we've been sitting outside for 2 hours with these clipboards.
Holy cow.
The first year, Huggins don't know your name. Huggins,
right.
Who's that guy? Who's that guy? And when he finally learns your name, that's a good thing.
Okay.
But just like anything else, I was there early. I stayed late. I took a lot of pride in that stuff.
Yeah.
We handled the Jordan contract early on. That was kind of my deal. That was one of the most lucrative. College shoe contracts have changed over the years. Yeah. So to get that back in the day was really unique.
Right. Sure.
But he's a lot like Durger. Just his attention to detail is unbelievable. His competitiveness is unbelievable. Right. But you just got to earn his trust. And once again, he's a guy you look at on the court and you think he's the meanest guy in the world. He's actually you've met him. He's the nicest guy you're ever going to meet.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
And he doesn't get enough credit because he's actually one of the smart. He's a magna cum laude graduate. Yeah. He knows what he's talking about. Yeah. But this is back in the day when UC football wasn't what it is now. Yeah. You have season tickets for a long time. You could get sections.
Sure. Yeah.
I remember. And you couldn't. Fifth Third Arena. Back in the Shoemaker Center. That was actually a rec center. If you remember, it had seven courts, and the stadium.
I do remember that.
It was actually an afterthought.
Yeah.
And we try to tell people. I remember it all the time. The capacity at Shoemaker Center was 13,176. Mm-hmm. Well, St. John Arena was 13,276. The state wasn't going to give them money unless they were smaller than Ohio State.
Oh, no kidding.
So they had to be 100 seats smaller.
How about that?
That's all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I actually built a relationship with the Claremont, Phil Sinkovich.
Yeah.
We should sneak them in all the time.
Sure.
Let them practice.
They practice after. Yeah.
I'd give them old warm-ups whenever we can. Never fit anybody, but
it doesn't matter.
You know, but we had that good relationship.
Yeah.
But back in the day, you know, that was the ticket in town was UC basketball. I mean, we were always I don't know if I was ever out of the top 10.
Right.
So I don't know if people understand or appreciate, you know, a guy in your position, what you did, and you talk about you were there early and stayed late, stuff like that. I mean, there's so much time and effort and preparation that goes into just a practice, let alone a game. But I mean, like with Huggins, what was the average practice time?
It was 3 hours. It's still 3 hours. So, and I'll tell you funny, he used to tell people, his philosophy was, if you could practice hard for 3 hours, the games are easy.
Hour and a half.
I mean, he literally, just a couple weeks ago, he was in town. They honored the Final Four team. Yeah. And we got to hang out at the tailgate, and Wes Miller was there, and he wants Wes to do good until next year when they're in the Big 12 together. You know, that kind of stuff. But like, and I'm not saying that shouldn't, you know, Wes was asking him, like, how hard are you guys going right now? And I was like, he's going to ask him that question. And Huggins looked at him and goes, 3 hours. We're going 3 hours. He goes, you really go that long? He goes, if you can't practice 3 hours for me, you can't play for me. You know, and his knock was when we got in January, February, March, you know, you get bumps and bruises. He wouldn't back down. You know, if you look at Huggins teams, they're always better in January, February, March because of the practice time over the holidays. Okay. It used to be very stringent 20-hour-a-week rules. But over holidays, there's no rules. You can go as long as you want. And I have to check what the new rules are. But back in the day, over Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that, you could go all day, every day. You could have 2 days.
And it hasn't changed though now too. That, I think it's like with you know, the NFL and all these other sports, is that all limited now, or do they cut those down for practice?
I mean, everyone's trying to do that. I mean, that's just the way it is now.
It is, but like, you know, like this is Thanksgiving week. I mean, this is a tradition. We practiced every Thanksgiving day. You know, 10 a.m. You're going to go 10 to 2. That was your practice, 4 hours. He had it scheduled for 4 hours, and we were all going to go to Loveland, go to his house. June was going to cook for everybody. The old managers, Joe Roberts and Corey Brand, Mark Berger, they'd all tell you about noon. All 4 years I was in charge, call June, tell her to turn the turkey off because we're not very good.
We're going to be here a little more.
We're going to be here a little bit longer. So you'd have to call her every single time. And she expected it. So they're having a bad practice? Yeah. All right, we'll just turn it down. And we end up out there about 6 or 7 p.m. and just kind of go out there and have turkey with them all the time. Yeah. But like during his practices, you know, it's broken down. I mean, it's nothing. It's not brain surgery. It's individual, then group, then team. You're not just scrimmaging all the time. We used to do 20 minutes of individual offense all the time, just so they could. You got to hit shots. If you can't open shots, nothing else matters.
Right.
You know, so every practice, it was 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes of individual offense, and there was 20 minutes to defend. It was called defend whoever you're playing. You know, You know, defend West Virginia. You're going to go over their stuff. Our players knew more about the other team's offenses sometimes than they did, because Huggins watched so much film.
Right.
He's kind of like, I tell him, I'd equate it like Peyton Manning. He just watches film all the time.
Yeah.
You know, if he came in the gym, like you'd have an early morning practice. If he came in the gym, if he had a hat on and his glasses, you were in for a long practice because he was up all night watching film. Wow. You know, and the players knew it. They'd be like, here, his hair's out of whack. You know? And it would be a rough 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know, but we had tough guys. We were one of the, I still say.
Well, who were some of the guys that you and Steve and I know, like, give me some of the guys that were playing around the time you were manager.
My big one was Kenyon Martin. Kenyon Martin was a senior when I was a senior. You know, so
that's crazy.
That's a whole other thing.
And Scott, just to let you know, I was in the last row, and Timmy and I had season tickets, so we were in the last row.
Yeah.
So we were
above the rafters.
Above the rafters, way up there for that senior year. That was a special year, man.
But just a crime.
So my infamous story is I had to go get the stuff from him when he broke his leg in Memphis. So I had to go. We were friends, though. The best players were always the easiest to deal with. They knew I was doing the laundry. They were very respectful and all that stuff. And I had to go to his hotel room, actually, because they took him to the hospital, took him back to the hotel room. Okay.
And
I had to go get his stuff. And Huggins even said, get all of his stuff, because this is monumental. I mean, he's one of the, I would argue he's the best player in UC history. I never saw Oscar play, but in my generation, my era,
he's in the conversation.
He won every award that was available to him.
Yeah.
And I went to him and I said, what do you want to do with this stuff? I got a garbage bag, bagged it all up. What do you want to do with it? He goes, I don't want to see anything anymore. That's done. I'm done with it. I said, what do you want to do with this jersey? He goes, and I don't want to get in trouble. He goes, take it. I don't want anybody to see it ever again. So it's actually hanging in my living room right now.
Oh, really?
We went back to school, and you had like 9 or 10 jerseys. And it was like we had to kind of distribute who. The school got so many, the College Basketball Hall of Fame got so many. He's like, just don't tell anybody. He goes, it's my jersey. You can have it.
Wow.
And I actually went back and got him to autograph it years later when he came back. I was like, just personalize it, because this is never going to get sold. This is never
right.
But Kenyon Martin, he was I think the best player in college basketball.
So fun to watch.
No doubt.
But other players, Leonard Stokes, I think Steve Logan was one of the best pure shooters in the country. Darnell Burton was there. He's an underrated shooter. Lizelle Dern was right before me, but he was a pretty good shooter. Cincinnati's not really known for great shooters, but rebounders.
Yeah.
If you go and watch a practice, he was real big on rebounding opposite. There's a stat out there somewhere, if you shoot the ball from one side, 75% of the misses go to the other side.
Right.
If you ever go watch a West Virginia game or a Cincinnati game, all the guys are running to the other side.
Yeah.
Because he's going to play the numbers.
Right.
And I still say he's one of the first coaches that he let the strength coach build those guys up to whatever he wanted. We were monsters back then.
Yeah.
When you had Art Long and Danny Fortson, Curtis Bostic. There was a kid named Roderick Monroe, was probably the strongest kid.
Yeah.
He was unbelievable.
He looked like a football player.
He was a football player.
He got drafted. He got a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
He played one.
After his senior season, if you remember the old Shoemaker Center, the football office was right across the hall from him.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And these scouts would come in, and some guy from the Cowboys came over and was like, "We're looking for Roger Monroe." And we're like, "No, football's over that way." He went in and met with Huggins, and he was like, "Tell me about Roger." He'd be the best tight end in the NFL. And he goes, would he be, how do you put it? Would he be ignorant enough to run down the field on special teams and bust up? He goes, "Oh, he's your guy." He goes, and not in a disrespectful meaning, but he would put a helmet on and he'd go run down and just kill people. Yeah. But he just was on. We had a strength coach named Mickey Marotti. Mickey Marotti's at Ohio State now, and I don't know what his official. He's like an associate AD for sports performance or something like that. Yeah. But he was the first guy that he built those guys, and Huggins let him have free reign with it. Wow. Mickey had the job. He could come up. We practice at 3. You're supposed to lift at 2. These guys, we're gonna drag our feet. He'd come up and drag people off the court. They can go down and lift. Yeah. And he had told people for a while his dream job was Notre Dame football. This is back in the 90s. Yep. And Hugs told us, he goes, Notre Dame just called. They want him. He goes, so we met with him, and he said, "Mick, you got to take this job. It's yours. Yeah. I want to stay with you. I understand, but you said that's your dream job. Go. Yeah. You go. I'm not going to hold you back. You got to remember, this is Cincinnati back in the 90s. They don't have all this money and everything. Sure. So he went with him, and he actually he kind of connected up with Urban Meyer a little bit somehow up there. He went down to Florida with him. Now he's with him the whole time. He went to Ohio State.
Oh, no kidding.
But I would tell you he's one of I think he's the best strength coach in the country. But that's a big thing now. Right. Because then Huggins went and got a guy named, Tim Swanger, Scott Greenewalt. Yep. Scott Greenewalt was with Frank Martin at Kansas State, at South Carolina. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I built there was a relationship. I still go to some South Carolina. I used to go to South Carolina games before Frank was let go.
I tell you, I love Frank Martin.
We would go down every time they played at Tennessee or Kentucky. He'd get us tickets. We go down, hang out the night before.
What a great guy.
He fell into an unbelievable situation at Kansas State. When Huggins went out there during his year off, Kansas State was irrelevant. Yeah, they didn't have a Nike contract. Their arena was kind of run down. And one year he built that thing up, an arena renovation, a Nike contract. And I would tell you, speaking, I can't speak for him, but he would tell you the AD and the president out there were phenomenal because they wanted to win. Yeah. He told us when he got hired, he goes, "I got hired and I come in and I have to go over and meet with the president." And he goes, "I think I'm going to get don't do this, all that. You're coming off whatever." He said the president had been going to all the open gyms and taking notes for him. He goes, "Hey, this guy's playing good. This kid ain't playing hard." He goes, so they wanted to win. Wow. And then when West Virginia called, you can only get offered your hometown job so many times. Right. And he said, "I had to take it." He's for how good he's treated Cincinnati, he's a god in Morgantown.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
If you've never been there, it's a neat little college town. Yep. It's a coal miners town. It's hardworking people, beautiful campus. It's a college town though. Yeah. I'm not speaking for him, but I think you wish he would have stayed in Cincinnati, but it didn't work out.
Well, did he when he came in town for that Final Four? It seemed like he got a really good. Did he enjoy his time when he came back? He
did. And so they had a tailgate up there by the Oscar statue, and I said one of the mistakes he made was he took a couple pictures, well then it turned into 2 hours of pictures. He won't say no to anybody. Right. Yeah. Just because he understands these people, and most of the kids don't know who he is, but the parents, people our age, they know who he is. Sure. Like I said, he gets a bad reputation sometimes, but he's just such a nice guy. You just got to get to know him. Right. Yeah. I told somebody the story the other day. Our big rival was Charlotte back in the day. Diego Guerrero.
Blowing his kisses.
We used to do that kind of. You'd go down there. That environment, I don't care. Anybody says was 100% worse than Xavier. And they were throwing stuff at you. They were spitting on you.
Holy cow!
And I remember ESPN. We played Thursday night 9:30, and that was a big deal back in the day. Yeah. Nowadays there's so many games. Nobody. Right. It is what it is. But Thursday night 9:30 was it, and they came in and did an interview. And he goes, "I'll do any interview you want, but I don't want it to be a negative thing." Okay. And first question, why do you wear black uniforms? And he was like, "Really?" this is where we're going with this already.
Oh, jeez.
And he even said, he goes, before we start, let me tell you this: Duke has black uniforms, UCLA has black uniforms, Michigan State has black uniforms.
Yeah.
He goes, our colors are red and black. And that's when he made a comment about working at McDonald's. If you remember that, he said, I don't come to McDonald's and mess. We showed up at Charlotte and everybody had McDonald's bags.
I remember that.
Everybody brought,
remember that.
like, wow. We were in the hotel and we were actually getting ready to leave for the game. He goes, we're going to stay and watch this interview. And he goes, yeah, we're screwed. He goes, they're just going to show up with all kinds of McDonald's stuff and all kinds of stuff. But they kind of put a black hat on him.
Yeah.
We had the 0% thing is the biggest crock there's ever been. We had 1 year with no seniors and it was a 0%.
Oh, yes.
So you say nobody graduated?
Right.
He looked after those kids like their father figures.
Yeah.
A lot of those kids didn't have good home lives. He gave those kids a lot of second chances.
Right. No question about it.
He was the first one that really went after the JUCOs really hard.
Yep.
If you remember, though, back in the day, I remember sitting in booster functions and he would tell people, you got to remember, Clifton 20 years ago is different than what Clifton is right now. It's a little bit different.
It's because of Huggins.
Yeah. A lot of it is because of him, but we'd bring these kids on for recruiting, and these kids would come out and say, oh, my Final Four is Cincinnati, Kansas, Kentucky, and North Carolina. If you ever been to a game at Rupp or Chapel Hill, it's a little different than the old Shoemaker Center in the middle of Clifton.
Right.
We weren't going to get these blue blood kids. We just weren't. That's just a fact of life, and he knew that. And that's why he kind of went after the JUCO kids so much.
Okay.
Nowadays, he was in town last year for the high school sports and the tournament down at the arena. And the way the rules are set up now, I don't know if he's ever going to recruit another high school kid. Why would you recruit a high school kid right now?
Oh,
you're going to go get a transfer.
You're also going to get say, hey, I'm going to commit to you, and then you know what? I've changed my mind. I'm going to decommit and go somewhere else, and then decide because that's what it is.
Well, it's too easy now.
But we were just talking about a little before this. Like Mick Cronin just did a big interview. It's different now. It used to be you're going to recruit these kids and they're going to stay for 3 or 4 years. You have to be prepared to have your total roster rehaul all over the place.
Yeah.
If you go back 2 years ago, and whether you like the guy or not, John Brennan got a lot of slack for 5 guys leaving. Everybody has 5 guys leaving now.
That wasn't that wasn't uncommon.
But he was one of the first. The problem was he was the first.
Okay.
And right afterwards, it was like, well, wait a minute, he had 5 guys leave, but Xavier had 6 guys leave.
Yeah.
Kentucky had 7. Maybe he was doing that out of ordinary what he was doing.
Right.
But it's changed now. Everything. I went down and watched Frank Barnes play at Tennessee once, and we literally ran into Rick Barnes, bumped into him.
Okay.
And I don't know Rick Barnes that well, but he treated me like he's a Huggins guy. We sat there and talked, and he told us, he said, me and Huggins, we're dinosaurs. I'm not sure how long we're gonna be able to do this because everything you've been told you can't do for 30 years, you have to do now.
Right.
The schools aren't paying them or anything, but the boosters are just it's unlimited. You can do whatever you want to. Yeah. If you ever said the word car in 1995, we'd have 15 investigations.
Violation
nowadays, you have to get these.
The NIL.
Yeah. So how many years were you down there with Huggins?
So I worked for him for 5 years as a student manager.
Okay.
And then when I was graduating, the guy that ran the Fifth Third Arena came in and said, hey, what are you doing for a job? I said, I don't know yet. He goes, our secretary's quitting. Why don't you take the secretary's job and then it'll help you find a new job? And I literally stayed in that position for 12 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I think my official title never actually really changed. They upped, event manager, director of events, but I just kind of ran Fifth Third Arena.
Okay.
We did Fifth Third Arena, Nippert Stadium, Gettler Stadium. We started with the old Johnny Bench Field.
Yep.
We had an AD named Bob Goyne who was phenomenal. Bob Goyne's first day on campus, I had to go pick him up and drive him around and, where's the football practice fields? And I was like, did you tour this place before you got hired? He'd just come from Florida State.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember that first week, there was a press conference that we were talking about some NCAA violation type stuff. And he went in and he told Huggins to leave and, he would take care of it. I'm the new boss. Let's fix this. Those two had a really great relationship for a long time.
Yep.
And I just, it didn't end the way it wanted to, but he kind of put UC back on the map. He got him into the Big East.
Yep.
He was starting the first facility renovations.
Yep.
But you're asking for hundreds of millions of dollars. That wasn't going to happen in the 90s.
Right.
That stuff that's happening right now they started it back in the day.
Yeah.
And they didn't. I don't care what anybody says. You didn't get in the Big East because of football. You got in the Big East because of basketball.
Right.
And when Cincinnati was in the Big East, that was one of the best eras of the Big East basketball ever.
I agree with that.
It just was. I know the old school. They're fun to talk about, but when you had those guys, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It got a little, and Mr. Goyne actually kind of warned him. It got a little too big. You had too many non-basketball members not having voting thing. It was just kind of weird at the time. Just you had teams that when you're splitting the revenue, and the basketball guys wanted something, and the football guys were like, well, we're not going to share bowl revenue with you. And that's why the whole split kind of happened.
Oh, gotcha.
It got too big for itself.
Yeah.
Them getting back in the Big 12 is monumental. I mean, you're talking $50 million more a year.
Huge.
I mean, we used to get, this is no joke, we used to get, I'm running the arena, we used to get emails. Turn the temperature down, wear a sweatshirt, ink cartridges, you can't get them until you shake them. So, I mean, I'm like reading this, I was like, this is Division I.
Wow.
That kind of stuff, like the budgets were that tight.
But now.
And Mr. Gorman would tell us, he'd get in those staff meetings, he goes, I don't mind spending money. If you can show me what we're getting for it, I don't mind it, but we can't waste money.
Right.
I still tell people, so when I was a manager, they didn't have all the scholarship money up front, so they said, if you want to work football and basketball. So I became good friends with Mark D'Antonio, Brian Kelly. I still talk to Brian Kelly's director of operations all the time.
Okay.
I like Brian Kelly. I'm probably one of the few people in Cincinnati who do. I like him, but the guy's one of the highest paid coaches in college football. You can't blame him.
Yeah.
But like Mark D'Antonio, when I became really good friends, and he came from Ohio State and went to Michigan State.
Yep.
He was funny because when he left, if you've been down to UC's weight room, it's top 5. It's huge. Right. It's phenomenal.
Yep.
He called me and said, "Are you going to the football banquet?" And I said, "No. I want to be in the office." He goes, "Well, I'm flying in with a couple boosters and a couple staff members. Can you give them a tour?" I was like, "I don't want to get in trouble. Am I allowed to do this?"
Yeah.
He goes, "I just want to show them because the weight room's so good."
Oh.
But he was we're to give him a tour, and he goes, "The one thing I learned at Cincinnati is," he goes, "when you're at Ohio State and you do these recruiting visits, you use like gold-plated, forks and knives. Because at Cincinnati, you got to find a cheaper way to look like that."
Right.
He goes, "That's what I took to Michigan State with me is you don't need to spend all this money on stupid stuff."
Yeah, right.
He goes, "I learned how to be like Ohio State on a budget."
Okay.
You're spending tens of thousands of dollars on stupid. Some of these recruiting visits,
right.
You just laugh at him like, really? That's what we're down to.
That's something.
I mean, it's just crazy. We learn how to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
Cincinnati, it's a great place to live. Every coach that ever left here would tell you. Butch Jones, Brian Kelly, Mark D'Antonio, they all wanted to stay. There was just no money here, and you weren't in a good conference.
Yeah.
Rick Minter was a great football coach.
Yeah.
He didn't have the hype, I guess, is what Brian Kelly.
Right.
He got caught in the bad timing of when the league was.
And Rick Minter's the one that really kept that program relevant because it was on the way down, and then he came in and kind of made that to where it was, where you got Mark D'Antonio, got all those other guys.
So he's an analyst now at Michigan. His son's a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
We used to drive Jesse around. Jesse's a little kid. He goes out and becomes a name for himself. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country now. And these coaches like a Harbaugh, they can go to Rick Minter and say, "I'll pay you $20,000 a year just to be an analyst." With his background, he coached at Notre Dame. He coached at South Carolina. I mean, this guy knows what he's talking about. And you got him on the sideline just kind of helping. But you build those relationships. And I left UC in 2012. I got to go to these. I'd go to Tennessee games. I go to Morgantown once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Like I said, I go. Frank's killing me now because he's in UMass. That's a hard place to get to. They don't play Dayton this year at Dayton. But it's just those kind of road trips and that kind of stuff. I've kept in touch with a lot of those guys over the years.
Scott. That's awesome.
Love those guys. I mean, like when I was at Marymount, I coached Butch's kids.
Mm-hmm. Butch was a good guy, But once again, Tennessee's Tennessee. They got money and they got facilities. When UC did all the renovations, they're phenomenal. But then you take them down to a Tennessee, and you're like, this is different level.
Yeah. We got to go down there and tour. It's unbelievable.
I mean, it's UC's got great stuff, but they use some of these SEC schools. They just throw money. I mean, they got barbershops in the locker room. I mean, it's like, what do you need a barbershop for? That's just what these kids want now. The training tables and the snack bars are the big thing. The nutrition things that's really got added. Recently. You got to get these kids to eat right, do all that stuff. You walk in like even UC. I haven't seen them renovated. They just spent $4 million on their football locker room. If you'd have told me the University of Cincinnati was going to spend $4 million on a locker room, I'd have told you you're crazy.
Well, it's funny you said because I remember going down one day, and I went down with Frank Brandy, and we were meeting with Mick and Steve Logan. And Steve Logan just walked in the door, and he was overweight. Mm-hmm. And Mick talked about the nutritionist and everything he needed to do. And then, like 2 months later, because that was like in the summer, like 2 months later when they started playing, I mean, he was like
bulking, looking good.
Well, Steve Logan, like I said, he was one of the most natural shooters in the country. I can tell you there was 3 times, I think, Coach told me that he outscored the other team. And I remember the Southern Miss game. He scored 41 and Southern Miss scored 38.
Yep.
No way.
I do remember that.
He outscored. Coach said there was 2 other ones. I don't know which ones those were.
Wow.
Coach likes embellishing his stories a little bit sometimes. But, the funny part about that, this is real funny. That's when I ran the arena. One of our Greg Hudson, an old football coach there, an old Moeller guy, he came to me and said, "Hey, I got a friend coming. we're out of tickets. You got any tickets left? And I was like, man, we're out. We're sold out.
Yeah.
Because this guy's important. You're going to want to know this guy. And I was like, oh. I said, so I called around. I got one of the suite holders gave me a pass. And I said, all right. I said, I don't know this. He's bringing somebody. So I go up there and give the guy his pass. And he goes, let me introduce you. This is Bowling Green's coach, Urban Meyer, which nobody knew this guy at the time. And they're like, this is going to be a big, I'm going to go, whatever, right here this whole time. He's going to be up and coming and all that stuff. And you go in there. He was just there to watch. He was just in town. His actual sister, I think, is still a vice president at UC. She was a higher up for a long time. But he was just in town doing that kind of stuff. That's the game. I just remember that.
Wow.
Steve Logan scored 41 and Southern Miss scored 38.
No kidding.
Wow. That is absolutely crazy.
How about that?
Some of those old schools, Southern Miss used to be a strong program. Tulane used to be a strong program.
Oh, sure.
Charlotte used to be a strong program.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think they've been kind of the victim of some of this newer stuff.
Well, when all the league changes, you know, that happen, you know, it affects teams.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it has to. I mean, it helped UC in both good and bad. I mean, the last few years, you know, I mean, not so much, but now, I mean, when they go into Big 12.
It's a whole new ball game. It's a higher level competition. Day in and day out, it's going to be better.
Better recruits. You know.
I know Hugs told the final. So when he had that Final Four reunion, he had a lot of. I think he brought the whole current team out.
Okay.
And he told me, he's like, you know, I want you all to win this year, but you know, the whole rah. You know, next year I want you to win. You know, he goes, I want you to win except when we play you guys.
Yeah.
And he goes, you ain't going to win at Kansas. I'm just telling you right now. He's like, you're not going to get any of the calls. You're not going to get any. You're not going to win at Kansas. Just move on. Go to the next game.
It's kind of reality.
I'm not sure if they've won at Kansas. Kansas is a hard place to play.
It's so hard.
But Kansas State's good. Kansas, you know, Texas Tech.
Everything.
It's just
there's no gimmies.
That basketball conference can be unbelievable.
No, it's an upgrade. And so Huggins' philosophy was just like Durger's, where he would play anybody anywhere. You know, he'd say, just go find these teams, and they're all made for TV specials.
Right.
He tried to, when Nolan Richardson was at Arkansas 40 minutes of hell, the whole thing. He wanted to play. They were top teams for a couple of years. They were trying to duck us, essentially. They weren't going to play us. And he told the operations guy, he's like, get them on the schedule next year, blah. Yeah. If you remember, we used to host that old Bearcat Delta Classic.
Yes.
Yep. So you just bring a couple random teams in. So we put a press release out saying, hey, we got these 3 teams coming in on these 2 dates. And the next day, Arkansas called us and said, hey, we'll play you, but this is our only date. He did it on purpose because he knew we just signed this deal. Huggins said, call him and say, yes, we're moving the Bearcat Classic. So we played a home game Thursday, a home game Friday, and then we played Arkansas on Saturday at Arkansas. And Nolan Richardson got ESPN and ABC to make it a noon game, which is really an 11 a.m. game. So we had to play at home Friday, fly down. If you remember, Bill Clinton came to that game, and we beat him by 30.
No kidding.
Wow.
I love it.
The scheduling is just, it's crazy what these operations guys have to do. Because you only have so many games. Your scheduling, it's all about budget, to be honest with you. They look at you and say you have 18, 19, 20, you know, you've got to bring in so many bucks.
Sure.
That's why you can't just play all these random home and homes.
Right.
You know, UC Xavier's a home and home. I don't know if there's any money exchange or not, but it's, you know, you bring in these quote unquote buy games because you got to fill your arena.
Right.
Because you have to pay for everything else.
Oh yeah.
You know, now I was talking to you about a little bit about how you guys played NKU.
Yeah.
There's always upsets in November. Everybody gets all uppity up about there always is, because these other quote unquote small schools have juniors and seniors. You know, the UKs of the world, they all have rotating rosters.
That's right.
You know, if UC goes and plays NKU in January, February, I bet you it's a bit different outcome.
Right.
No disrespect.
Not according to Mr. Horn there, the NKU, what he said.
He's a good coach. I like there. I hope he stays a long time. I think going to an NKU basketball game is a great experience.
It is.
It's a great arena.
It's a great arena.
It's a great arena.
You know, I wish they would have more fans over there.
Well, if they played UC all the time, they would
I go to 5 or 6 random NKU games a year just because it's, you know, I'm a dork about that stuff.
That's something we're going to get into here a little bit later after we go through some of these more questions. Aren't you up here now? Or
no, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things we talked about when I was texting with Chad Cunningham was one of the things he wanted to bring up was how you get into a lot of these events. Like he says that Scott gets into a lot of these events and he gets food for free.
He's everywhere.
For free. He's in everywhere. So Chad brought that up to me and said it was okay to use his name and wanted to know the answer to that question. So he wanted you to answer that for him.
It's called being efficient and building connections.
Connections.
You know, so I can tell you, back in the day, so I still helped Tom Gamble do the Skyline Crosstown Showdown. That was a big deal back in the day at Nippert Stadium. They're not allowed to host it anymore. It's not UC's fault. It's the NCAA's fault. They changed the rules. A third party can't rent. It's a whole other thing. But back in the day, UC never wanted to host any of that stuff. It was a headache to them. they were actually afraid. I've sat in the meeting. They were afraid that these high school games were going to outdraw UC football. They were.
You can imagine.
And I went to my boss, Paul Klazak, who treated me awesome for my years there, and I said, Paul, let me take this. He goes, here's the deal. We're bringing in some potential student athletes, but I'm bringing in tens of thousands of fans that have never been to campus.
Right.
Potential students, parents, or parents were scared to come to Clifton.
Right.
I don't think I'm out of line by saying that.
Right. Yeah.
And he said, run with it. And we built that thing up. They used to have some big crowds.
They were huge.
No question about it.
And then we got in the tournament, the Elder Coleraine. One of the things I really took pride in, when Elder was playing Coleraine one year, they called and we need a facility. I said, we can't. We got a noon home game.
Oh.
What are we going to do? I went to our athletic director and I said, let me play at 8. Just let me do it. I'll sell the place out. And he's like, it's going to be dirty. So we called the OHSAA and I said, you can play at 8, but we're not going to clean. We're not going to do anything else. It's never been done before here, and it was 33,000 people showed up.
Holy cow.
But doing through all that stuff, going back to what you're talking about, is I got to meet the ADs, and I got to meet the coaches.
Right.
I met Kerry Combs.
So you know a lot of people.
So I met Kerry Combs when he was just a lowly high school coach.
Yeah.
But you meet the Tommy Bolins of the world and the Steve Specks and all you bring these ADs in, and you make it a good experience for them.
Right.
So just I'm a kind of a high school sports junkie. Well, why pay if you don't have to?
No, I agree. And speaking of that, though, we have to. The one thing I wanted to get on this podcast that we had to talk about, because I love following it on social media, especially on Twitter and Facebook, is the pretzel phenomenon that you have going on. The concession. So let's talk about that. We need to know your top 5 pretzels in the city of Cincinnati.
It all started. So when you're an event manager, at a major university, the people you always take care of is the ticket manager, the equipment manager, and the concession guy.
Yeah.
Because they can give you stuff.
Yep.
So whenever they need stuff, I needed a jacket, I need tickets, all that stuff. They need something, you do it. So after every game, the concession guy always has a stash of leftover stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So he'd always bring me, just here's hot dog. I would sit there, do your financial reports, as eating a pretzel.
Right.
It's kind of my nature. I can tell you for a fact, for 12 years, after every home event, I had a pretzel.
Wow.
Just sitting at my desk, snap. People don't realize when the event's over, fans leave. I'm there.
I gotta stay till
on a football game day. I was there 8 hours before kickoff and 3 to 4 hours after the game. So it was a day. It was so you'd sit there and do all that kind of stuff. And it started in a Forest Hill school, not named Anderson. We went to a game, and I was sitting with Pat Stricker. You can ask Pat this.
Okay.
I just went and bought a pretzel, and I don't complain, but it was frozen.
Uh-oh.
It was horrible. I went to the lady, and she thought I was being difficult. I'm like, grab this pretzel and touch it. And she's like, oh my God, I gave you it was horrible. And it took like a quarter to get back. And it was a joke. I put it on Facebook, and people started writing about it. So I was just totally, just kind of screwing around a little bit, and it kind of grew legs and everything.
Yeah.
One of my best friends is Joe Roberts, who's the athletic director at Princeton High School, who was a Huggins guy. He was the first. I worked for him for a couple years.
Okay.
They don't serve pretzels. I don't know why. And he gets mad at me because I put this up on social media.
But they should.
It turned into a running thing. I get a lot of text messages from him and everything. But I help Joe run a lot of his game. We have an Ironton game this week. When they do tournament games, I go out there and his officials host, do whatever I do. I'm like, his boosters now know who I am.
Okay.
They see me coming in and we still don't have pretzels. Last week, the lady pulled me. I don't know these people. They're fantastic boosters, but I'm a part-time guy. She pulled me in. She goes, we're making a big announcement here soon. I was like, we're getting pretzels. They change all the time. Who has the best pretzels is West Claremont. West Claremont has sourdough pretzels from Sam's Club, and you can get cinnamon on them if you want them.
Wow, look at that.
So they're a little bit different. Now, Anderson, I might need to go to the Forest Hill School District meeting because they microwave their pretzels.
Yes, they do.
So it's not very solid. And I love Forest Hills. Zach McCormick, when he was an assistant AD, he used to bring me a pretzel and a Diet Mountain Dew because he was trying to get good reviews.
And he didn't get them.
No, I can be bribed. It's no. You got to get the right amount of salt. You got to get cooked enough, but not.
So is West Claremont your top?
It's by far the top.
Okay.
I'm trying to think who else. St. X has a good one. Here's the deal. It's who cooks it that night. Because I work at the Heritage Bank Center now.
Yeah.
I love our guys and all that. They overcook the pretzels, and I told them that. And then, you can't leave them in there too long or they get dry.
They need to listen to them.
If they get dry, they don't taste good.
Here's the other question I got for you.
I would tell you this. the smaller the school, the better the concessions are, because you got a little hometown mom and pop,
Williamsburg, stuff like that.
They care more.
You go out there and you know, do you have brats? Do you have salt? I mean, I went to Elder. I'm not going to lie. Elder's pretzel was very good, and I'll get in trouble for saying this, but all I was told is go to the end zone, the closed end zone. They got these sausages. It was overrated. Oh. So I'm probably not going to be allowed at Elder ever again. But they have kettle corn. It's got to be
a West Side.
Well, do you go with the cheese?
I'm not a cheese fan.
Oh,
I'm not either.
I got to go with cheese.
I don't put cheese in it. It's just got to be done right.
Yeah.
I got to have the cheese.
Williamsburg. I went and watched Nick Ayers play this year once. They had good stuff.
Yeah.
Elder has good.
Well, I'll tell you what. You work in a game at West Claremont. We'll see if we can try to get some pretzels there. I'll see if I can get a pretzel for you. But I got to know when you're coming.
But I haven't been to a UC Claremont game yet. Do you guys have pretzels?
Yeah, I think they do. They do.
I know they have popcorn because I can smell it all the time.
I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah.
So you're gonna have to come. We'll put you. We'll get you on. We'll get you on air at halftime as I'm broadcasting the game, so you can do a review on the pretzels.
I literally got emails from certain administrators at Princeton that, not my friend, asking me to, like, why do you do this?
So fun.
And it's a total joke. My buddy Joe, like I said, we're good friends. He brought me like a swag bag one day. It was like hats and some Under Armour.
He goes, please stop.
He's like, just don't say anything else. And I'm like,
yeah.
It's a total joke.
It is a joke.
He goes, my wife loves it. She goes, she thinks it's hilarious.
Yeah.
She's like, we'll go into meetings and like my athletic secretary will be like, can you get him to stop complaining about pretzels?
Well, then do something about it.
Oh, it's cruel. It's funny because you know anything about, I've been in event management my whole life and all that. Gold Medal, who supplies most of it, is right next door to Princeton. It's in Sharonville.
Yes.
It's about a mile away. I'm like, dude, they're right there. They're right there.
They can walk it there.
He told me once, he said, we can't afford to buy a pretzel machine. I was like, you just renovated this building for $150 million. I said, I'll go get you one.
I'll buy you one.
Right.
You know,
right.
I said, I was at West Claremont. They have like 4 of them at the middle school.
Yeah.
I want one of them.
So you just mentioned you work at...
So I'm at the Heritage Bank Center now.
You work at Riverfront Coliseum.
Yep. It is what it is. There's a guy down there. His name's Joe Wallach. I've known him for years, which, talking about building relationships, I met him because back in the day, UC used to play one game a year down there.
Sure.
Coach Huggins really believed that as the flagship university in the city of Cincinnati, we should play downtown once. Usually played at Miami. I think we played Temple once.
That's right.
There. He just thought that we should do that.
Okay.
And this is the guy I did the logistics with.
Okay.
And then actually during COVID, the event management business really tanked. Nobody was doing concerts. Nobody was doing sporting events. And when they were coming out of it, this guy was recruiting. He's like, I need somebody with experience. The people at West Claremont treated me awesome. You know how it is. You don't get rich working in a school.
Right.
And this guy offered me a good contract, and so I'm down there now doing the operations stuff. So I deal mainly with the shows. We had an R&B concert last night with Keith Sweat, and we had Trans-Siberian Origin on Saturday, and so I do like 90-95% shows, and then a little bit with the Cyclones. We have a whole other group that works with the Cyclones, but I'm an event guy. That's kind of what I am.
Okay.
It's hard to work in schools right now. It's really difficult.
So you not only work during the day, but you work the events as well.
Yeah. So we have a weird schedule, but he really sold me on the fact that we're really busy for about 8 or 9 months a year, but we don't do much in the summer. All the concerts go outside. There's no hockey.
Oh, okay.
So he's like, you're gonna have 3 or 4 months where it's basic maintenance, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
They treat me good. I'm an event guy. I'm a single guy. I'm never gonna get married. That's my decision, all that stuff. But it's a smart decision, believe me. But it's I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot about the music. My background was always in sports, and you start dealing with some of the Justin Biebers of the world.
Yeah,
you're sitting there going like, what is going on here? Man. This is we got Carrie Underwood coming up. And, we got a couple big concerts coming up. Yeah. The the Riverfront Coliseum. It's a functional but not fancy building. It's old. It's very old. I think they're going to try to do some stuff next year to spruce it up a little bit. I think everybody in the city wants a new arena. Right. We hear it all the time. It's just nobody wants to pay for a new arena. Nope. There's about 5 different plans for new arenas, but there's no plan to finance any of them.
Right. Yeah.
And I would tell you this, like the city of Cincinnati has more momentum right now than a lot of cities in terms of event stuff.
Right.
I mean, you've got an NFL team, you got a Major League Baseball team, you have a Major League Soccer team, you have great college basketball in here, you've got football, you got the Ovation and the Brady. There's a lot of stuff going on here. The city's gonna have to make some decisions in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And we want to do that. We lose out on a couple big events a year just because of the age of the building. But we get a lot more than people think.
Yeah.
I know you're a humble guy, but I can't imagine as many people you've met and dealt with and worked with. You're your man cave has got to be unbelievable.
Here's my problem. I got to finish it because most of it's in a closet. I mean, I have a lot of cool jerseys.
I bet you do.
A lot of some cool. I never ever tried to collect anything, but you just start getting stuff.
Okay.
I mean, if you walk into my living room, I have the Kenny Martin jersey. I have like I said, we were brand Jordan. I purposely ordered the blood jersey one year's number 23, and I got a Jordan autograph on it, authenticated. I have a Ruben Patterson jersey that's up there. I have to take a picture and send it to you. I got some pretty cool stuff up there. We actually hosted Barack Obama 3 times when I was running the facilities.
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, politics, whether you like, I don't care about your politics. He's the president of the United States, and he's running for president.
Yeah.
He came in the building once and was having a hard time with cell phone service, so we had to go get him a hard line. We walked in the equipment room, there was a helmet sitting there. And the Secret Service guy said, just ask him to sign it, he'll sign it. And I was like, you're not really supposed to do that. He just ask him. I was like, hey, do you mind signing this? So he grabs a Sharpie, he signs the thing. It says, go Bearcats, da-da-da. And I called the equipment guy afterwards and we go, hey, there's a helmet sitting on your desk. Was that an important helmet? He goes, yeah, I'm showing it to Coach Kelly tomorrow. It's got the red speckles in it. I'm like, okay, I kind of ruined it. And he flipped out on me. I thought I was in a lot of trouble. Well, luckily for me, Brian Kelly was a Democrat. So I went to Brian and I was like, Brian, here's the helmet. Look at this side of it. It's really nice and shiny. But I said, I'll pay for that. He's like, just keep it. It is what it is.
Right.
But it's that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Right.
I got a couple of his autographs. I got we were talking about Bob Knight before. I got Bob Knight to sign a basketball for me. It's sitting there.
That's awesome.
A lot of old, like you guys know, it's like they put logos on footballs and basketballs.
Yep.
I do have a closet full of jerseys that, I could start framing and just fill my whole house.
Cool. Yeah.
I got some pretty neat, but you never started out doing it. When you're an equipment guy, everybody wants to trade with you on the road.
Okay.
So we were one of the original Jordan schools. So everybody wanted our stuff. Because if you remember the old Jordan stuff, we were red and black. It was all designed after the 80s Bulls teams.
Right.
We were the number one seller for Nike all over the country.
Really?
And they didn't even like Cincinnati. They just liked the logo.
Right.
The C-Paul. Half the people in the country think the C-Paul stood for Chick-fil-A.
Right.
But we used to sell more stuff, than anybody.
Yeah.
Just because of the color, the affiliation with Michael Jordan, all that kind of stuff.
Tupac.
Our guys, we used to get so much stuff from Nike. It was back in the day, UC had the opportunity to be the first Jordan school. And other sports didn't want to do it because of the Jumpman thing. It wasn't a female logo. It wasn't a football logo.
Oh, okay.
And I know we just said, we'll just do a basketball. Well, you guys do your thing, we'll do our thing.
Right.
But they used to send you all the stuff. And when you're ranked in the top 5, you get whatever you want. Now, here's the contract. I need more.
Right.
Just send it. We would be on the court, and why don't we have something? Why don't the players want all the new stuff. They want the retro 4s. We'd call the Nike guy from the court. Like, coach is just ripping me right now. Why do we not have this? They'd show up the next day. They'd overnight it to you.
Steve, you think you can do that?
No. I got a sweatshirt.
And this goes back to I was stupid. If I would have saved some of my old stuff, some of those old we were like
start thinking about it.
We were one of the first schools that had the Jordan that put the word Cincinnati into it.
Okay.
We had 100 pairs of those. We were giving them out left and right. I never thought about just putting one in the boxes in my closet. Yeah. This thing would be worth for everything.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So you talked about your brother Craig. Mm-hmm. What's he up to now?
So he lives in Stowe, Ohio right now, which is right by Kent State University, right by the University of Akron. He used to work for A&A Safety, which is a local business. Yep. He worked for A&A Safety when they were a small mom and pop shop. Well, A&A is huge now.
Okay.
He went up there and worked for them, and then he kind of branched off, and he does the same thing A&A does. It's called Bain Industries, and it's very successful. There's not a lot of competition for that stuff. He's got 2 boys, Austin and Carson. Austin's a sophomore now, and he's a really good basketball player. He can shoot the lights out of it. His younger boy Carson, we don't even know how this happened. He got involved in volleyball. Nobody can figure it out. But he's a great volleyball player.
Really?
That's cool.
I don't know anything. I know enough about volleyball to be dangerous, but it's like, how did you get involved in this kind of stuff? And Craig told me it was the best thing that ever happened to him because nobody asked him to coach, nobody asked him to scout. He goes, I don't know anything about volleyball.
Yeah.
The old coaches up there would always, they knew he played basketball. He would take his sons and go scout for somebody just to go watch a game. Hey, can you just go watch them?
Absolutely.
People don't do in-person scouting anymore.
Right.
But his boys, if you remember that year that they bet season tickets to Kent State, just he wanted something to do for that. That's the year that Kent State went to, I think it was the Sweet 16.
Okay.
And the College World Series in the same year. So his boys real young thought Kent State was Ohio State.
Right.
It was It's like, no, this don't happen every year.
Yeah.
You know, but they're hardcore Kent State fans. He still comes in town a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Just moved into a nice big old huge house. He's very successful.
Good.
That's awesome.
He actually married a Turpin girl, Lori Nolman. So you know, it's just kind of funny, like two people from Anderson Township, and they're up there, and Stowe's a lot like Anderson.
Yeah.
No, he's doing good.
Oh, good for him.
That's crazy. So we try to always wrap these things up by, you know, giving off some of your favorite memories. So let's start off when you were, you know, basketball manager or even in football. Talk about one of your favorite memories that you had in high school.
In high school, you're going to laugh at me and ask Pat Tricker this.
Okay.
So we used to go the Final Four. You know, I took being an equipment guy real serious.
Yeah.
And this is a true story now. So you've been to the old St. John Arena.
Sure.
We used to stay, so the Final Four, you go down about 2 miles and there's a little, you know, rinky-dink hotel you're staying at.
Yep.
So like when you were with Jerry Durger, you had to ride in the same car. It was tradition. You know, you rode in Pat's car and you rode in Mr. and Mrs. Gardner used to drive and all that stuff. We got kind of screwed up at state and one of the parents couldn't come up early. So they're all discombobulated. You know, and I'd pack the uniforms and we'd go to the arena and I'd hang everything up. It would look nice. And like, so if you're at the state Final Four, it's busy. There's traffic everywhere, a lot of one-way streets. Please, I want you to call Pat Stricker and ask you because he will confirm this. We're like pulling up, a guy named Brad Thompson, a good buddy of mine. I said, hey, we switched cars, didn't we? He goes, yeah. I go, did you put the uniforms in the car? He goes, I can't say what I said to him, but he left the uniforms back in the other guy's car. So we got to the arena and nobody had the uniforms. And I was like, Pat, we got to go back. He's like, why? I'm like, the uniforms. So he said a couple words he shouldn't say.
Yeah.
You know, so me and him go busting back.
Sure.
Our players are out there in their warm-ups and nothing else on underneath it. They're like, just warming up. And we're going down one-way streets. And we actually got back to the hotel and he goes, did you get the car key? I go, he goes, I got it. Don't worry. Yeah, but we're running in, like there's like 15 minutes before the game, like getting the uniforms back in there.
Wow.
No way.
So we had to do, that's one of my favorite memories there. You know, we ended up losing the game. But Jerry Durger also, we used to have butterscotch lifesavers.
Okay.
And there was an order everybody had to get them in. Jared Durger got one, then Jim Stretch got one, then Pat Stricker got one, then I got one, and the AD got one, and Francis Xavier Rudolph got one. But you had to do it in order. So I had to give them. You know, that was just a tradition we did.
Okay.
We had to do that every single game. And if it was out of order, you're at St. John Arena, like, where's Rudy at? You got to find him and get him before I have mine. You know, I mean, but going to the Final Four in high school, taking kids to a college arena, the old St. John, that's a big deal. It's huge. I think we played Clevelandville, Angel St. Joseph. I think that was Melvin's team, actually.
Oh, really?
I think it was right around that time.
Wow.
But that was just a great experience.
Yeah.
In college, I would tell you, hands down, when we beat Duke in the Great Alaska.
I was going to ask you if you're part of that.
So if you watch the film, I'm the guy at the end. I'd jump up and I'd knock our doctor down. Just beating Duke is just...
I'm going to go back and watch it now.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of funny if you actually go back and look at the schedule. We beat North Carolina the next week in Chicago. So
really?
We beat Duke and North Carolina pretty close to each other. They used to have that grade 8 tournament.
Yeah.
You know, that was just a cool thing because you went up there and we weren't expected to win. It was, if you remember, they changed the rule to accommodate Trajan Langdon. They let him go 2 years in a row, which you're not allowed to do. And you go play, and that's his hometown of Anchorage.
Okay.
And you go up there, and they play in a downtown Civic Arena. It seats about 6,000 people, and they all hate you, and they don't want you there.
Right.
You know, that kind of stuff. And Ryan Fletcher to Kenyon to Melvin. That's probably one of the best plays in UC basketball history.
Absolutely.
It's every UC highlight. It has to be on there.
And nobody even knew you won because the game didn't get over till 3 a.m.
Right.
So the next day,
I'm going to tell you a story. That was around Thanksgiving, wasn't it? Because I want to tell you a story because I was down in Tennessee.
Okay.
And I was down there, and I was at my in-laws. They're all in bed, and I am drunker than a skunk watching a game. And I'm literally, when that happened, I am screaming in this house. I woke everybody up because I'm going nuts because of that.
It was crazy, you know. And that tournament's not even, I don't even know if it exists anymore. But that used to be one of the elite tournaments.
Yes, it was.
Sure.
Yes, it was.
We were not supposed to. We could do a whole podcast on that road trip. I mean, I met Jerry Tarkanian on that road trip, and it was like it was kind of like, this is back in the day when you had actually trade film. You know, nowadays it's all huddle and all that. But like, he had a whole bunch of film on one team that we needed. Remember Larry Eustace? He was a great coach.
Iowa State.
He was at Iowa State.
Southern Miss before that.
Yeah, both a really good dude, good coach. But we used to trade tape, and like you had to like drive down the. You know, our film guys like, can you drive down and trade with Fresno for me? You know, and downtown Alaska is what you think down. It's snowing and it's freezing. And you're just driving down the middle of the street and you walk in and like you're looking for the video guy, and the guy in the hotel's like, well, I don't know. There's a couple Fresno people over there. You walk in and it was like a movie out of Las Vegas. It was like there's Tark and his staff sitting in a corner in a smoky restaurant.
Yeah.
And he's like, just sit down. And his voice is exactly what you think. You just sit down. You sit there for like an hour and you're like, well, what's going on right now? I wish I had a phone now that could record all this. They loved Huggins, all that kind of stuff. Tell Bob this, tell Bob that. You're just sitting there like, well, I'm not even trading. We're just going to sit here and hang out and take notes. and just the coaches you met over the years that just are phenomenal coaches that you didn't know about them back in the day.
Right.
It's fantastic. I could do a whole thing on road trips. I used to love the road trips. Were fun.
I bet.
It was first class. We treated these guys, with first class. My first road trip was a sophomore, was a training trip, was a 3-city 9-day trip.
Oof.
We went from Louisville to New Orleans to Milwaukee, and
really,
it was insane.
Oh, I bet.
It was just a very big learning experience.
I'm sure.
But it was just, the road trips were phenomenal. The home games were fun just because you have 13,176 going crazy.
Right. Yep.
And all that stuff. But when you go on the road, we used to really take a lot of pride in going into these places that hated us.
Yep.
And then, Marquette used to sell their place out for us.
Yep.
23,000 strong at the Bradley Center, just because they didn't come to watch their team, they came to hate us.
Right.
Because we were that black uniform kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
The Charlotte stuff was always bad. Southern Miss was always fun, just because it was kind of a random little college town. We used to love going to New Orleans. Tulane used to play in a high school gym.
Yeah.
They would open all the windows before you got there and try to freeze you out. You get in there, and you like especially warm in New Orleans, and it's freezing. That was probably my first experience on Bourbon Street. I've never been to Bourbon Street. I learned a lot on those trips. We went to Hawaii. We played in Hilo. Played in Alaska. The Boise trips were actually kind of fun because you're the old UC football guy. If you remember, in '97, UC football had not been to a bowl game in 53 years.
Okay.
And when that Humanitarian Bowl, which was kind of considered a little bit of a joke to a lot of people, they were picking their teams, and it came down to us and Georgia Tech. And they wanted Georgia Tech because they were the conference affiliation. And Bob Goyne pretty much said, we'll come out, we'll buy all the tickets, and if you invite us out, I'll send my basketball team out there. You don't have to do a return game. And the guy said, we were number 3 in the country at the time. He goes, you're being serious? He goes, they will play a game at your place next year.
Wow. And
they had to go tell coach, they're like, hey, by the way, you're going to Boise next year. He's like, oh, we got a home and home. You're like, no, you just got to go play out.
Sure, you love that.
And we actually had to go out the next year. We played the night after the football game. Louisville was playing in the football game. There's an old AD named Tom Jurich.
Yeah.
Tom Jurich is a guy that everybody talks bad about and hates, but you want him to be your AD.
Yeah.
He's a good AD.
Yeah. He
came over to we're standing there in practice, and some dude comes and goes, hey, this guy needs to talk to you. He's like, talk to Huggins. And I was like, who is he? He's like, oh, it's Tom Jurich. I go, can I help you? He goes, tell coach we're having a big pep rally tonight. We want to invite you guys over. And I was like, all right, this is us in Louisville. I'm not sure how it's going to go. So I go over and say, coach, he wants us to have us over for this pep rally. And I go, they're catering Outback. I really want to go. This is kind of cool. They're catering Outback. And coach says, I don't think I should go, but you guys can go. Go over there and do it. He goes, I think I would be kind of a polarizing figure.
Okay.
We went over there. They treated us so good. Tom Jurich introduced us. He's like, we have our rivalry, but we're on the same conference. We're close. They want us to win the football game. We want you guys. Their fans are phenomenal.
Really?
Our guys are in the back getting as many blooming onions as they can get. And steak. I don't even know what we're talking about. That's all they care about. I could do a whole podcast on food and travel too.
I bet.
We're gonna have to get you back on for that, man.
The food and travel.
That's awesome, man.
But that's just a great experience. Huggins is my guy. Durger's my guy.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good coaches in this, in this level of high school and college in this town.
But we talk about it a lot, and we probably overuse the word, especially Danny and I. But just the legends. I mean, those two guys. I mean, just to be a part of them is
it's getting harder and harder. There's so much time demand. The time commitment is unbelievable. Like I told you, I know a lot of these ADs around town. There's a lot of ADs quitting everything just because they got families, they got kids. And I've talked to a couple different classes, but when you look at UC Xavier, NKU, Mount St. Joe, Thomas More, Claremont, right? They're pumping out thousands of sports management degrees, and these guys don't know what they're getting into.
Right.
They all want to go get these high school jobs, and a year or two in, they're like, I can't do this. There's so much time, and I think the money's getting better for certain jobs and not other jobs.
Right.
Exactly.
But you got to really want to put your time and effort into it.
Yep.
And you can tell that there's good coaches, and I don't ever say there's bad coaches, but there's some guys that just get paychecks and go on.
Right.
But it's just getting hard, these time commitments. It's a year-round commitment.
Oh, yeah. It's not 9 to 5. It's not 40 hours.
I mean, we haven't even talked about, I think Evan Dreyer is one of the, Evan Dreyer lived with me for a while.
That's scary.
That's my God. I could do a whole podcast on Evan Dreyer and how lazy he is as a roommate. you know.
I love it.
But he makes Anderson football fun.
Right.
The kids want to play for him.
Yep.
His kids are always in great condition. His strength conditioning is phenomenal. He runs a fun offense. I like sitting, I like going to sit in the stands and just listen to parents rip on him. It's kind of funny. Why aren't you punting?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Well, I'm and he knows it, and we have a running joke about it at the golf outing. I rip him on air when he doesn't punt in a situation, and we joke about it, and his brothers at the golf outing will say, I listened to you on air, it was great, you were slamming Evan, But it's, the thing I try to tell him was that there's times I feel like his defense is playing so well that I agree with it. There's times when so that was the only time. I think that's the only frustrating thing that people have maybe is that. But beyond that, his offense is unbelievable.
It is
hands down unbelievable.
When you go into a series though and you know you're going to go 4 plays, you need 2.5 yards of play. That's it. But your kids know going in third down. I get it. I said it's funny when they go up there. He had all these stats. He's a very philosophical guy and he does all this research. He started doing a lot of that stuff. There's some guy down in Tennessee that did this and all that in your net. At the high school level, you have to have a good long snapper, a good punter, and everything's got to work perfect. Back in the day, you have a Kevin Huber at McNick, you're going to punt the ball.
Right.
He's going to average 50 yards a punt. That's a little different. Right. And no disrespect, I don't know who the punter are, but high school.
I don't even know who Anderson's punter is, to be honest with you, because he didn't punt it.
No, they didn't, because the quarterback did.
Yeah, that's true.
So a lot of that stuff, though, so if your net average is 11 yards, just go for it. And I know it. I give him a hard time about his defense all the time, but his defensive guys, they work hard. They get disrespected a lot, but they play hard. I think he's got good coaches. Just kind of is what,
they all put in the time.
I think the only thing that I would love to see him do is play some of his offensive guys on defense. He did in the playoffs. He did in the playoffs, and it made a big difference. And I just think that a lot Kings was doing it. It's just like we said, times have changed, and I know he doesn't want to get his guys hurt because those are his offensive guys. I get it, but you just Vince Serrano back in the day, guys played both ways. You just do it. I mean, that's just, and I feel like that might help. That's just me being a broadcaster.
He's built a very successful program.
Absolutely.
And people get upset when they don't do it. It's like, his bad years, he's going to win 7 or 8 games and all. He just made a run. This is the first time in how many years it's not winning Wood or LaSalle. I think you're going to see a lot more Anderson Kings. I think Kings coach is phenomenal. I think they're going to be very good for a long time. But I would tell you the Anderson kids are probably, I texted Evan the other night when, this is my Huggins coming out as soon as the game gets over on Friday. I was over at Princeton. I see Anderson lose. I texted Evan, when's lifting start? Let's go. November 20, whatever.
Right.
That's my mentality. Let's just go, and his kids are ready to go. They want to do it. He had his banquet. I think he's that kind of guy. Let's knock this thing out and let's get going.
Right.
I think the ECC is a little bit underrated.
It's very underrated,
but they're solid. Milford's getting a solid program.
Yeah, Claremont's a little bit down. Better.
West Claremont, I think Nate's a good coach out there. If you had Nick Ayers down here, Nick would be a great. Nick's building something out of Williams. We're a little off topic, but you got some good coaches out here.
Yeah, you really do. I think Cincinnati football showed in the playoffs what it was like. So,
well, I think when you look at Luke Fickle and UC, he just knows you keep the best kids in Cincinnati, you're gonna be successful. Xavier's talking about building a football program just so they, and I think it's gonna happen. Come back a year from now, I bet you they announce it's gonna happen because all you have to do is recruit local kids.
Right.
You don't have to play Ohio State. You got to play Dayton. Those kind of schools. And there's enough solid programs here that kids want to play. And that's why the Thomas Moores and the Mount St. Joe's are good because you got local kids.
Yeah. Correct.
One of these days, I'm going to get UC Claremont to build a facility.
I would love it.
Please.
You're playing in the, I know it's called the Cougar Dome, but I can tell you for a fact it was the mess hall on main campus when I was there.
That's exactly right.
It was the food court. And I remember in the meetings, they're like, what are we going to do with this thing? And they're like, Claremont needs a gym. We're like,
and they brought it out.
We're like, can you really do that?
Did you know that, Danny?
Yeah. And the guy was like, yeah, you can do it. You can do anything. That's supposed to be a temporary facility. Yeah. That turned into a,
20 years.
But I'm going to tell you something, Scott. It's electric in there when it's packed and when he upset a couple teams the last few years, it is electric.
But UC Claremont's getting big. I would tell you 15, 20 years ago, you didn't want to go to UC. It was just an afterthought. A lot of 2-year programs.
Right.
There's a lot. He knows a lot. There's a lot of 4-year programs. It's a good school.
Yep.
The next university out's OU, I think, isn't it? Probably. But you can recruit those Claremont County kids. They need some kind of rec center gym with it doesn't need to be 10,000 people, 2,000 people, and all that stuff. It's going to have to happen eventually. That gym ain't going to last forever.
No, it's already on its last leg.
And I just wish they would do that. I think that would spark some things out there. They got a good thing going out there.
I agree.
I think Brian's a really good athletic. Brian's a guy nobody talks about. He's a really good athletic director.
What he has done out there has elevated the whole entire their athletic program.
I mean, you just get more students out there. You get those West Claremont kids, the SBACs, and then if you had a full-time facility, you could recruit some of those kids.
Absolutely.
No question.
I'll be out to a game. Just make sure there's good pretzels and a diet we don't do.
Say all that again one more time.
If it's bad, though, I'm going to have to get it.
We're going to hire you. Come on out.
I can be an official reviewer.
There you go.
That's what we can do. We'll get you on air. We do a broadcast. We got a couple games coming up here soon, and then I know we got one right before Christmas, right? The 21st. I know we got that.
You're playing at OU
next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish people would come out and watch that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's the kids play hard. You know better than I do.
Oh yeah, we played hard against NKU. I mean, obviously we was a big talent difference and height difference, but
you guys held your own.
We held our own.
You did really well. It was a really cool experience. So, hey, Scott, we really appreciate you joining us here, man. It's been honestly, we could probably talk for another 2 hours about all this stuff and all these stories. Maybe we'll bring you back and we'll do a review on the pretzels at UC Claremont. And
we're going to have one that's going to be G-rated, and the other one the real stories that he can get down.
Real stories we might not be able to broadcast, but there's some good ones. And if you guys want to, we can go on a road trip. We'll go to Morgantown, do a live from.
That would be even better.
Do a dingo and the coach.
That would be even better.
Have you been to a West Virginia game since he's been there?
Nope. So I would love to.
I just got to tell you this. So when he went there, the Coliseum's old.
Yeah. It's
an old building. They took a lot of pride in it, but they didn't have a practice gym. So when they were out there, he was telling us, he's like, I got to go to the rec center. There's like 6 courts. We get 2 of them. He's like, we're out there practicing. It's a big curtain down. There's, this is big time Big 12.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, and he's pulling kids off. He's like, you guys want to play? I'm cutting this guy. And he went to the AD. Every AD says we don't have money. That's the first reaction. Remember, we don't have money. And he wanted a new practice facility. He went out and raised it. They brought an architect in, and you fly around. Whenever you do these kind of things, you say, who has a good practice facility? Let's go check it out. And And he literally got this architect, and the guy has between $12 and $13 million, state-of-the-art facility, blah, blah, blah. And he literally said, whatever you build, make it symmetrical, and let's build 2 of them for $26 million so the women have their own, and I have my own. So he has a court, and they have a court that nobody can schedule. He goes, one of my kids wants to come practice, they've got the court. One of her kids wants to come. He goes, I'm not being disrespectful, but when you start scheduling stuff, you got to go around each other.
Sure.
He goes, I'll fundraise the whole thing. You do that, I'll do this. The weight room it's right on I can't even pronounce, what is that, the Shenandoah River, whatever?
Yeah.
It's right, it's beautiful and all that stuff.
Wow.
But you walk in this practice facility, it's a Hall of Fame museum, the locker rooms are first class. It is so nice.
It's cool.
You just walk in, but that's the kind of stuff, he did. So we can go look over the river. There's like a turf conditioning thing right on the back in the woods.
Nice.
They have their own nutrition station and a cook that comes in there and does all their stuff for them. It's just first class. Gosh.
So we're going to have to change the name of Dingo and Co. It would be Dingo Coach and Willie.
There you go.
How about that?
Anytime you only
Dingo Coach and Willie.
We got to get him back.
I like talking. It's but this is
get them on all over.
But that's what athletics is about. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's a lot about emotion. It's building relationships. I've met a lot of great people, and I keep I'm pretty outspoken. I don't mind talking about people. Yeah. And no, I don't plan on paying for any event unless I have to. I can tell you, like Tom. I talked to Tom Gamble a lot. Tom, what he's done for high school sports has been phenomenal. He's also the commissioner of the Greater Catholic League.
Right.
So I hit him. I need a GCL pass. And he was like, well, we don't do passes anymore. So I've kind of built.
Get me in.
Well, what you got to do is you got to find who actually, you got to find the secretaries that really run everything.
Yes.
Then you go over there and, hey, what's up?
Get me in. Hell yeah.
I don't have a kid. I'm not spending $10 to come in and watch this stuff. Why would I do that?
Well, that's what we do is when you come walking into Cougar Dome, we'll have Greg Ellis introduce you. Now entering the gym.
Don't tell Chris Newton, but I know a lot of the staff members over there. I'm a taxpayer, so I'm not paying to go to an Anderson game.
Nor should you.
Yes.
You see me. I like standing down in the corner.
I love it.
This was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So we're going to go wrap it up. We could actually make this Dingo and the Coach and This Week in Anderson. That's the way it was. So
thank you, Scott.
Yeah, Scott, we appreciate it. So we're going to wrap it up here. So for Steve Ellis, Dan Evers, and Scott Wilhoit, you've been listening to This Week in Anderson or Dingo and the Coach. What do you want to call it? We'll talk to everybody next week. Have a good night.